let's play this clip of Ron Wyden talking to RFK Jr. I mean, it was 7 minutes. Maybe we can start it a little bit into it. But Wyden went hard. What was also interesting, and Maggie Hassan, after this, senator from New Hampshire, started praising Kennedy's past statements of being pro-choice. Now, to be fair, they were all the way back in 2023. And Kennedy does have trouble maintaining consistency with certain things over the course of, a matter of months these days. But apparently it caused Cat Turd, is that his name, on Twitter to pull his endorsement of RFK. But here is Ron Wyden speaking to RFK about his past position on vaccines.
Mr. Kennedy, you have spent years pushing conflicting stories about vaccines. You say one thing and then you say another. In your testimony today under oath, you denied that you were anti-vaccine. But during a podcast interview in July of 2023, you said, quote, "No vaccine is safe and effective." In your testimony today...
Pause it for 1 second. I just also got to say, that is not me breathing that heavily. It is one of our geriatric senators who apparently didn't realize like they're breathing into the microphone. It could have been RFK. I don't know. But somebody is on there, is like if they've been wheeled in on some type of ventilator.
Prove you're not anti-vax. You note that all your kids are vaccinated. But in a podcast in 2020, you said, and I quote, "You would do anything, pay anything to go back in time and not vaccinate your kids." Mr. Kennedy, all of these things cannot be true. So, are you lying to Congress today when you say you are pro-vaccine? Or did you lie on all those podcasts? We have all of this on tape, by the way.
Yeah, Senator, as you know, because it's been repeatedly debunked, that statement that I made on the Lex Friedman podcast was a fragment of the statement. He asked me, and anybody who actually goes and looks at that podcast and will see this. He asked me, are there vaccines that are safe and effective? And I said to him, some of the live virus vaccines are. And I said, there are no vaccines that are safe and effective. And I was going to continue for every person. Every medicine has people who are sensitive to them, including vaccines.
Right. So
he interrupted me at that point.
Now, pause it for a second. I just want to say, I've watched that, and it's quite possible that he was going to go on to say for every person. But then why isn't he on there also talking, there's no medicine whatsoever that is safe and effective for every person? There's actually, you know what? There's no foods that are safe for every person. Nothing that exists in the world is safe for every person. You could be petting a little tiny kitten and maybe it has some type of like virus on it and it scratches you and you die of cat scratch fever. It's just like, these are hedging terms. He has said, I run into people and I'm hiking up in the Topanga Canyon or wherever it is up in LA and I tell them, don't get your kids vaccinated, and hopefully he'll hear it and then somebody else will say it to him and they won't get their kids vaccinated. My own personal conversations with him where he was convinced it was thimerosal. And then when I was like, a couple years later, they've taken the thimerosal out and there's no increase in autism rates. It's still in there. What? It's just a coincidence that every other vaccine is also problematic. Go ahead.
Vaccines.
Right. So
he interrupted me at that point. I've corrected it many times, including on national TV. You know about this, Senator Wyden. So bringing this up right now is dishonest.
let's be clear about what you've actually done then, since you want to deny your statements. For example, you
It's
have
Kennedy
a
who's breathing
history
like that.
of trying to
'cause it's
take
worked up now.
vaccines away from people. In May of 2021, you petitioned the Food and Drug Administration to not only block Americans from having access to the COVID vaccine, but to prevent any future access to the life-saving vaccine. Are you denying that? Your name is on the petition.
We brought that petition after CDC recommended the COVID vaccine without any scientific basis for 6-year-old children. Most experts agree today, even the people who did it back then, that COVID vaccines are inappropriate for 6-year-old children who basically have a zero risk from COVID. That's why I brought that lawsuit. I don't want to, I want to emphasize
Mr. Kennedy, the facts.
All right, we could go on with this, but we don't need to. Well, a couple of points. One, this petition was not revoke the use of the vaccine for 6-year-olds and under. It was to revoke the use of the vaccine, period. The COVID vaccine. So that's disingenuous. And then Wyden goes on to read stuff from Kennedy's book on measles, where he says measles parents have been fooled into thinking that measles is deadly. And then he says it's only 1 in 10,000 kids who would die from measles in the 60s.
Yeah, Bradley, put up this. There's a type of fallacy that's being used a lot by Republicans here called the Mott and Bailey. And can you make that smaller so we can see the whole thing? And this is just what a Mott and Bailey is from medieval times. The fallacy goes is where the argument conflates two positions that share similarities, one modest and easy to defend, and one much more controversial and harder to defend. That's the Bailey, the easy one is the Mott. The arguer advances the controversial position, but when challenged, insists that only the more modest position is being advanced. Upon retreating to the Mott, the arguer may claim that the Bailey has not been refuted, and you see this with RFK here. You also see this with Hegseth when he's like, on those podcasts where I said no women in combat positions, actually I meant we need standards, and if they pass the standards, then fine. It's type of chicken shit argument.
I will also say, just in watching the questioning, it was it John Kennedy from Louisiana, Republican, I think it was. Was that who it was? Was questioning RFK Jr. Is he a doctor? And
are you talking about the Medicaid questioning?
Yes.
Cassidy's a doctor.
Oh, John Cassidy.
Other
Bill
Louisiana
Cassidy,
senator.
yeah,
Yeah.
Cassidy.
Mm-hmm.
And Cassidy was asking about Medicare, and I'll tell you something. RFK did not expect to have, it seems, anyone, no less a Republican, questioning him on actual questions regarding Medicare, Medicaid. In addition to RFK celebrating Medicare Advantage, which is a complete ripoff, both for the U.S. government and for a lot of the subscribers to it. And yes, Kennedy gets Medicare Advantage. I'm quite sure he has other health insurance as well. That is not Medicare. He doesn't rely on. But he doesn't seem to know any of the intricacies of this agency. People, people talk about he's going to be a head of HHS and he's going to institute, no processed food or whatever it is. I don't know how he's going to go about doing that. That seems to be all to be legislative. He's not going to have the only thing he's going to be able to do, really, from his stated agenda, is to inhibit vaccines. But putting that aside, he doesn't seem to understand any of the dynamics that are going to be necessary for overseeing Medicare and Medicaid. They understand, HHS is a huge, huge agency. I think after the VA, in terms of what we're talking about, discretionary spending, it is, and some of it is non-discretionary, it being Medicare, I think it's the second biggest agency there is on a dollar for dollar basis. And he doesn't seem to understand the intricacies of stuff like Medicare and Medicaid. That seems to be an afterthought. And I mean, he's just wholly unqualified, aside from the anti-vax stuff. But we'll see.
Maybe we'll play it tomorrow with Emma, but I liked the questioning where he was asked, so you have all this tough talk about bodily autonomy, and what is your position on Trump's anti-abortion policy? He's like, I agree with Trump about abortion being a tragedy.
Over and over again. Also, I don't think that there is ever in the history of this country been a nominee who says the words cousins more than RFK. Everything is about, he's got so many cousins. Some are some agree with vaccines, some don't. Like, I don't know why he keeps like citing his cousins. As if like somehow his cousins are representative of the,
Probably because if he wasn't from that family, no one would be paying attention to him.
Yep. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.